All right. You guys are able to hear me, right? Okay. Yep. So, very good afternoon, and sorry for the delay for the talk, right? I was just getting my internet issues sorted out, and now we should be good with that. So, now basically what we are going to look at is unlocking the power of Sitecore forms with the form field integration, right? So, as most of us might have worked on XP or XM version of Sitecore, wherein you might have challenges with integrations, right, with forms. So that's what we are going to look at, and how we have tried to solve that problem, and how to make things flexible enough so that we can deliver integrations quickly for our customers on the XM and the XP platforms, not on the cloud versions, or not on the JSS right now. So this is mainly focused on that. So about me, I'm an architect at Accenture, and my name is Arun. So I have been working on Sitecore from past 6 years, all the way starting from Sitecore 9.0 to 10.3 right now. So have handled a couple of upgrades, all the minor versions of Sitecore, and also have been working on other CMS platforms as well. And overall, I have like 9 years of experience, and I also started my blog recently on the website that's there, and apart from my work life, right? So I like traveling a lot, and I keep going on trips for every month, and also do photography, and also I'm pretty fond of playing badminton. So that's pretty much it from my side. Um, so I kept the agenda pretty much simple. Um, I'm not going to do much of slides. We'll look at live demo. So we'll talk about the problem statement, wherein we'll look at how psychoforms we can, what are the challenges with that, and how we solve those challenges for our customers, and those things we'll take a look at, and also the solution of it. It's pretty much the live demo that we are going to do in the solution, and key features of it, also the enhancement that I'm working on. So that's what I'll also talk about. Maybe down the lane I'll release them. And it's an open source module that I'm working on. So it's not yet officially published. So I'll be putting together documentation for it and the blog for it. So that's something which I'll be doing in a week. All right. So how many of you have worked on Sitecore forms? Just raise hand. Okay. And how do you do integrations? Is it data exchange framework, or uh, any other way, like writing a custom submit action and doing the speak work? So I guess that's where this entire problem challenge is what I've listed down, and the forms integration challenges, right? So as a developer, let's say a new developer comes into the team, and they are not aware of this custom submit action, and the speak changes that has to be done for the Sitecore submit action, right? So, and also if you're doing some API integrations, then you're pretty much sometimes end up hard coding them, and just avoid that, right? How flexibility can be given to the entire editor to do those mapping, and tomorrow some other system comes in, how we can do that integration pretty seamlessly. That's what we are going to look at. And as I said, technical dependency is based on, like, yeah, you should be aware of speak 2.0 if you're doing some submit actions, and things like that. And also the time and resource constraints. So sometimes you might have to deliver things pretty quickly, and you'll be pretty hard on deadlines. So you want to just do the integration like within minutes. That's where you can do this integration with the solution that we have implemented. And from marketers' side, they also want some flexibility of doing the mappings. Sometimes they just say, like, okay, I need some other integration to be done. Maybe, for example, the example that we are going to talk about is on24. You might have heard of the webinars that happen. So we'll try to integrate the Sitecore forms with on24 without touching any code, and submit registrations to it. We'll create a event and then do the registrations for it from the Sitecore forms without touching the code. So we'll do all the mappings for it directly in the Sitecore forms interface and do the implementation of it. And also, let's say even though we do implement Sitecore forms with interface wherein we select the drop-down fields and like you might have seen submit action like send form, send email in 10.3 and things like that, right? So wherein you select the form parameters, the different fields that you want to map to and things like that. So similar pattern we are going to look at and try to solve this problem and implement the solution for it. So let's dive into the solution. So we are going to cover this in 3 parts. So first is the API integration configuration, and then we are going to look at the forms field mapping. How do we get into the Sitecore forms and do the respective mappings for it and do the configurations. And then we'll also look at how those things are stored in the submit actions and how they get translated to the dynamic submission and how do the mappings happen dynamically and things like that. If time permits, I'll get into the technical details of it. Like we'll look at the code and things like that. But yeah, because of time constraint, I'll see if let's see how it goes. So this is a Sitecore forms fields API module that's built basically to bridge the entire Sitecore forms and other integrations that we work for our customers, right? To seamlessly do the connections and things like that. So let's look into the demo. So first we'll do the API integration configuration, wherein we are going to shift to the Sitecore instance that I have running. Let me see. Okay. All right. So this entire framework is also based out of, right now, I re-implemented this using the webhooks patterns that are there. The authorization layer, right? That's there in webhooks. If you have used 10.3, you might have looked at these webhooks patterns. So I wanted to keep that base layer as it is. So I have put together the base layer for that in a generic way and also define the configurations in those patterns itself, because it will be easy for any potential use cases that we have down the lane, right? So you can directly utilize the similar patterns of webhooks, and you'll also have similar configurations available in your API integrations. So that's where this entire pattern is driven towards. And let me go to this API integrations. So this is where you start defining your API integrations. Hope this font is visible for you. Is it? Yeah. Okay. All right. So you start defining your API configurations in this structure. So I have a couple of configurations already created, like salesforce.com and on24. So for example, like I said, we'll create an registration form for on24, wherein we'll submit the registration details to on24 and do the configurations. So these items are basically like a folder in this case. It's just for organizing your API endpoints and details for it, and also the authorization details for it. So that's where I have put together for things for on24, SFDC, and things like that. And here you can see that I have created a API integration endpoint. So these are the options that are available, like authorizations. You can configure all the authorization types that you want to use for this particular integrations inside that, and the API integration endpoint details. So that's what you define in this particular item type, and this is basically a folder for organizing your integrations. So if I get into this, you can see that the fields are pretty much similar to the webhook fields, and it's leveraging that similar pattern. I initially implemented this in a different pattern, but since 10.3, this is some pattern that's going to be used for webhooks. So I wanted to keep it consistent across that pattern and don't want to deviate from the Sitecore patterns of configurations. So you can see, you can define this URL over here. So this is the URL that I've considered for the on24 integration. And you have an option for configuring whatever post type you want. It's not just that get and post is allowed. You can add other endpoints as well, the HTTP method types, and use it. And it could be even put, patch, delete. You can configure those, and this is going to convert your entire data set into a proper JSON format and push the data across. So that's what it's going to do. And yeah, if you want to define some custom headers, right? So in this case, the ON24 API supports custom header-based authentication. So that's where these details are put in over here, and there's no other authorization details I have configured here. So let's quickly go ahead and create one ON24 event first for that. So let me create one event. Hopefully. And that's very slow. Yes. That's a bummer. Okay. Let's give it one more try. All right. So let's give an event name as SUGCON India. And I'll select maybe a particular date in this. I'll just populate this directly, 25, and let the webinar be from, let's say, 4 o'clock today evening. Okay. I guess I selected wrong. Okay, and let it be for an hour, and just put Kolkata as a region, and that's pretty much it. I'll just create this event and grab the event ID from this, and we'll configure it in the API endpoint, and we'll start using that. All right, so this is the event ID for this particular instance of ON24 of this particular submission. So I just need to change this. This is my demo run event ID that I had. I'll just change this, and the number that's over here is the client ID, and that's a pattern for ON24. And now I'll just save this, and let's create the rest of the. So you can start defining your fields, the endpoint fields, right? So you can start defining them underneath the structure. So whatever field you want to integrate on the destination endpoint, you can start adding them over here. So I have already added them and kept for the time constraint purpose. So you can pretty much see like these are generic format of field templates. So wherein you define your endpoint key, where the JSON key, right? That's going to be there. So you configure that. In this case, first name is the field name, and then I'm keeping it required because at the destination endpoint, it's a required field, and I want any editors who are doing the mapping, they should make sure that mapping is done. And also, if you want to give some description, you can do that, and there's a type field option, wherein if you want to do some more data massaging of that data that the user fills in, and the destination endpoint field type might be different, and you want to do the data conversions and all, so you can handle via that as well. And there's another option for your value conversion, that's the value converter type. So maybe I can zoom in a bit. Let's see. I guess that's not a good issue. Yeah. So the value converter type is nothing but your normal C# extension that you have to write together for your value converter. So you have to just inherit from the field value converter base. There's a class setup for that. You just inherit that and start putting your logic for the conversion, and it will just put that dynamically into your data set while doing the submission. So you need not worry about explicitly going and fetching the actual code base for the submit action and do any manipulation for it. So this pattern will allow you to do a lot of things. Let it be doing regular expressions, using regular expression for doing the data formatting, or even the phone numbers formatting and things like that, right? So even you can also do integer to Boolean conversion if someone does a checkbox check, right? So you can basically take the value from that and do a conversion based on the destination field pattern that's there, and you need not touch essentially those submit actions or anything. So, and the value converter type parameters is meant for defining your parameter types that needs to get passed to your reference that you put in. So we'll look at those things in the further demonstration, but those are the field types that are available, and also you can pass in a default value. Let's say you have to pass in some particular value as a constant for every time for any form submission. Let's say lead source or something, right? So it could be from your website, it would be always web, or if you're doing a mobile based design, then you can do mobile submission and things like that. Based on where you're using this integration for, you can define those default fields, and also you have predefined tokens that are available. That's like timestamp, timestamp UTC now, and the grid. If you want to populate a random grid, you can do that. You just need to pass in $grid, and it will push that data to your endpoint directly. So those are the different fields that are available in that option, and you can create all the respective fields like that. And right now this supports mainly, I would say, nested JSON and the normal JSON format. So there's something that I'm going to look at from implementation perspective as array of JSONs. So if you have some implementation that needs to take in data in array of JSON format, so that's the logic. I had to work on that part, but yeah, this is working out for most of the JSON-based format data submissions and nested JSON as well. So let's look at that. And also, if you look at here, all the fields are configured, and these are the destination field names: company, email, first name, and the last name. So any questions still here? Like, do you have any questions on with respect to the destination field configurations? Yeah, it's pretty much the same, because end of the day, your destination field will need to accept a particular format of JSON or array of JSON format. So you need to configure. There would be one single field for that in your destination for sure. So this module will take care of converting that to the respective format, and it will send it across. Yeah. So I'll quickly update this token. Did I do that? Yeah. Okay. And also, yeah, I didn't mention this, like content type option. So I kept this as open text field because let's say you want to do different content types. Initial development phase, I had like just JSON support. Then with other integration types, I saw like, okay, there are different approaches for doing the content type for different endpoints. So that needs to be flexible enough for a developer to just go in and configure that, and it should be easy for us to integrate with any of the systems we want to. So that's also there, and you can just use that option. So in this case, it's a form URL encoded submission. So it will take care of doing the encoding for you for form URL encoding, and it will do the content creation in that format and do the submission. So let's publish this now, and I guess that should be it. All right. I just have a pre-created form without any mappings defined yet. So I've just kept a couple of fields over here, and let me get it to the submission, and let me take this out. So there's a new submit action that has been put together for a generic API mapping. So that's submit to API, and you can just pick that and select your source endpoint that you have defined in the API configuration. So this is where you'll just dive into that particular configuration and select that, and select those configurations here, and you'll see pretty much all the configurations that are there. From the permissions perspective, that's something I have to still look at, like okay, if a particular editor does not want to see some of the options, right, some particular endpoints, so that's something I have to still look at, but this is where the endpoint configuration is done. Once we select the endpoint details, you start seeing the mapping fields over here. So this is a speak rendering that's built, which can be reused across any of the submit actions. If you want to utilize this for any other projects, any other integrations, you could potentially use this. And the documentation for this is going to come out soon. And this is basically going to read set of this will go back and look at the configuration that we did earlier and pull those data set over here and define, like, okay, on the left hand side, if you look at it, these are the fields that we had configured earlier, and in the right hand side we start defining the mappings for it. So since I don't have a company field, I'll just for now put a generic fictitious company. That's Acme, one of my favorite Cartoon Network show, Roadrunner. I don't know how many of you have seen that. So and then the email, you can just do @mention. It's all driven by your @mention notation. So you just need to know what field name is there. And here, email is the field name for the field that I created earlier. So I'm just selecting that. And then the first name, and similarly the last name. And you can also have additional text into this. Let's say you want to do something, some additional data manipulation in this level, you can pretty much do that here itself. And also the tokens that we were speaking about. So you can even use the tokens directly here. Like you can just pass in grid, $grid, and that will get converted dynamically during the submission. So I'll just keep this mappings and I'll click on save and save this. And let me just quickly publish this. Okay, before publishing, I guess I'll also show the format that the data would be stored here in the submit action. So essentially all the mappings that we had built over there, it will come back and get configured into this parameters, and that's how the submit actions are built, and all the data is going to get in over here and it will get configured. So all the mappings are defined here, and let me quickly pull up JSON formatter maybe and show this. I don't want to open up my code piece for that. So you can see, let me zoom in a bit. So you can see pretty much all the mapping field details that we had defined, it's all over here. And this is what is going to get converted during our submission into a concrete model. And then we are doing the manipulation of this data, the data set that we have. And it will be easy for us to directly do the integration in that case. So you can also see the notations that are there for the mappings that we define, like @email, and it's not dependent on your form field ID. So there's no dependency on your form field ID. That way it allows us to save this form itself as a template and reuse it for any other landing pages that we want to spin up quickly. So that opens up that opportunity for us, and content editors would be really happy about that because they want to do the work pretty quickly. They don't want to keep doing the mapping every time and keep doing those things every time, right? So that's where this will help them out. So these are the different details, and the API endpoint is also pulled from here. So we have a grid-based mapping over here, so that's what it will do. And let's get back to this. Yeah, so that's what the form details, form mappings would look like. Now let me switch over to the demo and refresh. Yes, let's see. Yeah. All right. So I'll just do a submission for this with my name, and I'll use a Mailinator IE just for demo purpose. Maybe I'll just give some random dates in between. 8/23. And I'll hit the submit. And right now, the data will get converted in the necessary format that the On24 needs to accept it. So it will do the submission, and let's go back and look at the On24 module now to see if the data came in over there or not. Just let me go to home. Okay. We'll go to the reports. That's where we can see our submissions that goes to On24, and we can see all the details over there. And also we can do a lot of integrations with this, like delete and things like that. So I guess something went wrong now. So let's go ahead and look at that. I did not make it through. Okay, that's where we dive into the logging part. So there's a logging for this. So we can just go to our Sitecore logs and start looking at our logs, wherein we'll see what things got wrong, were wrong, and what are the details of it. So we can look at these things over here. So let's go back here. I think it has not got updated yet. Yeah. Let's search for the log. Looks like the form did not get saved. I did submission for my previous integration that was there. Maybe I'll just do the publish, and then I'll do the submission. All right. Okay, now it created that submission submit action, so that should be good. Okay, getting back to the form, and I'll resubmit that form. And maybe I'll just add one. I guess that should be fine, and I'll submit this. There you go. That's submitted, and let's get back to the events and take a look at the registration details. Hope the demo gods are with me. Let's see. That's pretty slow. Okay. Yeah, there we go. The total registration is 1, and come on. Sorry for the network issues that keeps popping up. Let's see. All right, so you can see the data that I submitted is directly mapped here without touching any code, and it's all dynamic. Now, I guess we are running out of time. I wanted to demo Salesforce lead integration as well, and also how the net, it's pretty much a similar pattern, and you can see those things work the same way. And I'll quickly show through the fields structure over here for a lead and the authorization configurations that are available, and we'll get back to the slides and quickly wrap up the feature details. Okay, so here, just like our web hooks, there are different authentication types, authorization types that are supported, like your API key-based authorization and basic auth and OAuth, client credentials grant and password credentials grant. And those are the different authorization types that are supported. And this is pretty much utilized from the webhooks, and thanks to Sitecore for that. I did have one more module that I had built earlier, so I just scrapped that and started using this because this is the base foundation which will work for higher versions, and it's going to be best for it. And from the compatibility perspective, right now this is compatible with 10.3 and above. So 10. I wouldn't say when the next release is happening, but yeah. So yeah, so it's 10.3, and if you want to use it with lower versions of Sitecore, there's a dependency on identity model framework. So since the entire authorization piece is utilized from that, um, I'm also going to put back together the fallback module for 10.2 and others, so that you can still leverage this OAuth 2 implementation and need not explicitly go and code things every time and do those things, right? So that's what we are going to avoid and work with it. So yeah, once you have all those things configured, you just come in here and define the endpoint details and the JSON implementation type, content type. It's JSON over here, and you pick your authorization endpoint details, and that's it. You should be good to do the integration and submit. Just publish this and go back to forms mapper in the submit action and do the mapping, and you should be good to do the integration with that pattern. But yeah, Salesforce.com is a simpler example that I took because I could get a trial sandbox, and so I wanted to do a demo of it. That's why I went with that option. There's already data exchange framework for mass data sync and all, if you're leveraging experience profile and all. So um, this is one of the use case, but yeah, you can integrate with some other endpoints as well. So going back to the slides, I guess this one. Yes, I'll skip a couple of them. So we looked at the API configuration and the form mappings, and then we did also look at the form parameters JSON preview, how those form parameters would look like, and things like that. Moving on to the next slide, we'll look at the key features of the modules that we spoke about right quickly, and we'll wrap up the session for it. So this enables us easy API integration without touching any code base. We can just directly do the integrations as it is. As you all saw that it was seamless implementation and easy to do that. And as said, the different authorization types are there, support for it. So even if you want to use a normal API endpoint without any authorization, you can potentially use that as well. It supports that. And there's a lot of other scopes of this module as well, wherein if you want to utilize to build out a drop down in your form, right, which basically gets data from some other endpoint, and you want to put together a wrapper for your endpoint that you're calling, right? So you can leverage this. There's a API authorization integration service that's available. You can call that and pass that item ID to it with all those details. Let's say you want to pull some list of items from some other endpoint which is authenticated and show it in the dropdown. So that enables us to do those integrations as well. So that's some of the use cases of it that will be published soon as well. I'll work on that. It's some of the thought process that I have for it, and I'll put together things for that. And it does also support nested JSON, like I mentioned earlier. So if the JSON format would look like this, you can pretty much go and do the mappings for it. So I have a quick video of it wherein you can see it's like records of 0 followed by what are the object you want to access, right? The properties, you can do that. And the dynamic index part, so right now here you can see that there's 0 index value. So that's something that I have to work on still, wherein you can do a multiple records addition into the API integration endpoint and do the submission. So that will also allow us a lot of flexibility for multi-page forms, wherein you want to do additional data integrations for similar record types. So you can pretty much use that, use this case for that. So that's pretty much on the JSON types. And since we spoke about the static and dynamic text mapping, so this pretty much allows us the token-based formats and also directly you can add this at mention notation of form fields, also static text. So that's pretty easy for any editor to do the mapping and get started with forms. So that's and also you can use this for your save as template, as I mentioned earlier. So that's one thing which is going to work out really well for your business users. And also the extensibility of the form fields mapper module that's there. It's a rendering that's available, and you can pretty much consume like any other speak rendering, and there are events associated to any mapping updates. You can capture that and do any implementation based out of that. So, and also there's a error logging. Like I quickly went to that earlier, but let me just get back to that and show how it exactly looks. I think this is how it is. So this is one of the log details that I have from my earlier submission for Salesforce lead as part of my trial run. So you can see you'll get all the detailed logging of your submission that's happening, like lead and how much time it took, the performance aspect. So right now it's running in a debug mode. That's why all this information is logged. If you want to explicitly handle a couple of other scenarios also, we can do that. From the PI perspective, you need to take care of not logging many things, right? So in those cases, we can avoid those logging as well by disabling the logging functionality of it. So that's one thing. And then the future for field value converters, that's also available, wherein you can just do the conversion using this particular implementation format. You just need to implement a converter for yourself for whatever format you want, and it basically takes this field value converter base as inheritance, and you have to inherit from that and pass in a regular expression or any template parameter that you want to pass in that field value converter type parameters field. So it's a concrete version of it. So you need to define a concrete class for it and say, okay, this is what your parameters are going to look like. Then it will, you can use that code base inside your method and leverage that for any of your transformations. So that's one of the things. Speaking of future enhancements, as I said, pretty much most of the things earlier, dynamic array support, and I'm also thinking of to implement file upload capability, since we have to go and touch the pipelines for doing the submit actions for this file upload and things like that, right? So let's say you want to integrate with some third-party API wherein you want to upload that file directly to it rather than touching any of the pipelines, right? So that's also something I'm going to implement and get that configured for it. And also session variable support. So we just looked at single form submission, but what happens if you want to chain things together, right? So we want that data set that comes from the endpoint response. We want to utilize that for some other purpose. So the chaining of that can be done using session variables. So that's something that's going to get implemented as well. So how effectively we can do this configuration in the form field mapper itself and not touch the code. So that's what we are going to look at as well. And UTM parameter tokens. So for business teams, it's really one of the key thing for marketing purpose. They need the referral URL and where they are coming from, all those UTM parameters, right? So how flexibly we can configure those for different endpoints. For one single endpoint, it's fine. We can hard code that or get those mapped and leave it. But think about if you want to integrate with multiple systems, then we need to have different conventions for it, right? So to avoid that, we can use this tokens for it as well. So that's pretty much it. And you can ping me on any of these approaches and any questions. Yes, we are pretty much done with time. Yeah. I'd also like to know how you guys are doing the integrations for sure. This is my way of thought process. This is not something recommended or anything like that. It's something that I'm thinking and implementing because I feel this is what is missing in the implementation. This will open up a lot of opportunities for integrations for sure. Any questions?
Some APIs require custom headers. So how can we implement that? Yeah.
So custom handlers in the sense.
Custom
So
headers,
script headers.
key value pair header.
Yeah, that's what I showed, right? Like you can go back to the API configuration and you can define your custom headers. It's not tied to your code base at all. So you can, whatever headers you want to pass in this.
Okay.
Let's get back to this. Yeah. So if you have any different header types for any of the endpoint, you can define that here. And also, if it accepts a different content type, you can define that. So it's all driven from your back office itself. And also, I think one more thing that we can say is, yeah, I guess it will allow you to do all this mappings as well, and maybe down the lane there can be other options as well. Introduce the response type that you get and how to handle that and do the mappings for it down the lane. So chaining of it.
Can we catch the response from API and probably show an error or an alert box on the UI?
On the UI, is it?
Yeah.
So this is a fire and forget implementation right now. We could potentially do a normal synchronous way of implementation, and I'm still handling the success and fault implementation as well, wherein the approach that I would recommend is go and trigger a webhook or any event from your Sitecore and maybe form submit event and try to implement a webhook implementation for your further integrations or any data transformation you want. Or you can chain again further API integration services there, so you can utilize that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I can quickly show the logic of it as well, if required. Maybe offline. Yeah, and all this source code is going to get, it's already there in my GitHub. You can check out. I have to put together documentation for it. I'll be doing that soon. Yeah. All right. Thanks a lot, guys.